It is less than 1 week away from Thanksgiving, and I am hosting this year. So I have a ton of stuff to do. And in addition to that, I'm also recipe testing some new sourdough bread recipes for my blog. So to survive the week, I am making a few one dish meals that will just make life easier during these busy days because I'm going to be doing a lot of cooking in a couple days. So I want to do less cooking now. I have a lot of different types of one dish meals I'm sharing today: sheet pan meals, skillet meals, a one pot meal. But first up is a cheddar crusted pork chop and veggie sheet pan meal. For the veggie portion, I am just using up a few things that I have in the fridge and pantry, in particular Brussels sprouts and baby red potatoes. But the thing that I don't like about using Brussels sprouts and red potatoes is that they do require a little more prep than sometimes I have time for, especially during busy weeks like right before a holiday. So if time is of the essence for you, I recommend using something a little bit easier, like throwing some baby carrots on there, a bag of cauliflower, something like that. And now, of course, you can get as creative as you want with a sheet pan meal, but what I like to do is limit my sheet pan meals most of the time to an onion and 2 vegetables, sometimes even just 1 vegetable. So that way I am not stuck chopping up a bunch of things, because the whole point of a sheet pan meal is to keep it simple. So by featuring an onion and just 1 or 2 veggies, you have a variety of flavors, but it's just not too much work for chopping. For this recipe, I am going to bread some pork chops. You could use chicken breasts if that's what you want to. And I am making this cheddar crusted, which is delicious, by the way. So the first thing I'm doing is preparing the breading in a small dish. These are sourdough breadcrumbs that I think I actually made on YouTube not too long ago. I'll find that video and link it in the description box. And then I'm adding in some cheddar cheese, a little bit of freeze-dried onion powder. You could use regular onion powder, Italian seasoning, and salt and pepper. I have a 3-year-old also eating this, so I did not make them spicy, but I think this would be really good too with a little bit of cayenne pepper in it. Now, one thing I should note is that I know these are one dish meals, but sometimes there are more dishes needed to prepare them, which can seem a little off-putting if you really only want one dish to clean. So if that's the case, just slap some pork chops on that sheet pan and call it a day. But for me, what I like to think about with one dish meals isn't so much about if there are dishes needed to prepare. I don't want a lot of big dishes to put in the dishwasher, because that's what really starts to slow down my cleanup, is having like a big stock pot and a frying pan, a saucepan. That for me is what slows things down. So I don't really mind these smaller dishes for one dish meals because it's really easy cleanup still. So now I am just putting that pork chop, I'm dredging it in some egg and milk mixture and then right into that breading and cheddar cheese mixture. In terms of a breading, usually what you do is you dredge it through flour, dip it in egg, then put the breadcrumb mixture on. And in this case, I did not use the flour because I'm not frying them. These are going right in the oven, and that breading with the cheese, I think when the cheese melts, it actually just helps the breading stay on. It really did not need that flour mixture. So that reduces some of the dishes, and also it reduces an extra step. I am putting everything on a preheated baking stone. The oven was 425 degrees, and I have the veggies on one side and the pork chops on the other. And these go in for, I think I kept them in there for about 12, maybe 13 minutes or so. I took them out and flipped them over so they could crisp up on both sides. One thing to think about when you are pairing your protein and veggies for a sheet pan meal is to make sure that those veggies can withstand the temperature and time needed for the protein. Because if the protein isn't finished cooking yet and the veggies are overcooked, that's a bit of a problem, because now you have raw meat next to vegetables that are getting overcooked. So you just want to make sure that you have a hearty enough vegetable that can withstand that time. I let that cook for about another 10 minutes or so on the second side. And in total, this meal took about, I'd say 35 minutes to make, and it could be faster if you use vegetables that don't need to be chopped. This was so good. That crusty cheddar cheese is delicious. And if you happen to have leftovers, a really great way to crisp up breaded food like that is in the air fryer. So the next day for lunch, you can pop it in the air fryer and you have a delicious crusty breaded pork chop. Okay, so next up on the one dish dinner menu is a turkey and sweet potato skillet meal. So I don't normally use ground turkey. It's not one of my go-tos, but sometimes I just need a change of flavors and a change of pace. So every once in a while, I get ground turkey and make something with it, like turkey burgers, or in this case, a skillet meal. And this one is super easy. So here I am just chopping up some onion, and then I am dicing up sweet potatoes. And then in this skillet, I am browning the ground turkey. And if you have ground beef on hand, that will definitely work too. And just for reference, that is 2.5 pounds of ground turkey that I got from Sam. So this is definitely going to last us for a few meals. Once that turkey is almost brown, I'm adding in the onion and 1 clove of elephant garlic from our garden. And just as a side note, depending on where you live, it is not too late to plant garlic. So you plant it now and you'll harvest it next year, and then you'll have delicious homegrown garlic. In fact, I have a full blog about how to do that over at moonandmagnolia.com. I will leave that in the description box. But once that garlic is aromatic, I am adding in the sweet potatoes. I had a half a box of beef broth that I'm putting in there. And then I am adding enough water to mostly cover the sweet potatoes. So most of this I am eyeballing, so I don't have a specific amount for you. But when you're making a skillet meal like this, where there is liquid, often you can just sort of eyeball it and then add a little more water if you need it, or let it cook down if that's what you need to. Now I'm just adding in some seasoning, a little bit of cumin and some chili powder, and stirring it together and bringing this to a boil. To speed up how quickly those potatoes cook and also to prevent that liquid from cooking down too quickly, I like to cover the skillet. And then once those potatoes are close to being finished, but not quite, I take the lid off and let that extra liquid cook down. At this point, if you still need more liquid, just add a half to a full cup of water or broth, whatever it is you are using, and let those potatoes finish cooking. And in the meantime, I'm shredding some mozzarella cheese. And in the minute or so that it took to shred the cheese, you can see most of that excess liquid has reduced, which also creates a lot of extra flavor. So now I have the heat off. I'm adding in some mozzarella cheese on top, a little bit of Parmesan cheese. You'll see some of these ingredients over and over and over again in this video. I like to use the same ingredients when I am making meals like this, so that way I don't have to buy as many groceries or think about it too much. And then I just let this sit with the lid on for a couple of minutes until that cheese melted. And you can see this was super melty and delicious. Now, one of my go-tos right now to make things extra flavorful is to add some freeze-dried herbs on the top of my dishes. Now, if you don't have freeze-dried herbs, you can just use regular old chopped herbs. Either one will work just fine, but that really gives it a nice, fresh, and bright flavor. Adding just a touch of brightness to the end of a dish really just elevates it in a very simple way. And this is really delicious and versatile. You can eat it as is. My husband and I were saying too, we could probably roll this up into some sort of burrito for lunch. It is so good. And truly, it is just one dish to clean up. I have so many things going on in my kitchen right now. I'm working on these bread recipes. This is a sourdough cranberry walnut bread that I am working on for my blog. So I'm recipe testing these, getting ready for Thanksgiving. So these meals really have to be simple. And I made both of the first 2 meals in this video on one day, and now it is the next day and I'm making 2 more. And what's important about that is that these are easy enough to make ahead and they all make great leftovers. So if you want to do a little meal prep, these are great recipes for that. Also on the menu is a 1-pot chicken and pasta meal, but first I need to make a chicken. So I always like to make a chicken in the Instant Pot once a week. I talk about this a lot on YouTube. I throw in any veggie scraps just to add flavor and nutrition and to prevent some food waste. And while that is cooking, I am going to first make an Italian sausage and creamy Orzo 1-pot meal. And just as a spoiler alert, this stuff was so good. So for this, I am using a mild Italian sausage. I actually wanted sweet Italian sausage, but my local grocery store did not have any, but you can use any type of sausage you want, and I could only get the links. So I am removing the casings, which is a great little trick. If you can't get ground sausage for some reason, just get the links and remove the casings and you have ground sausage. I'm browning this in my cast iron Dutch oven, and I did not use a cast iron Dutch oven until I had a gas stove. But if you have a glass or electric stove, you can use a Dutch oven on that with just a few careful tips and tricks. I have a full blog about how to do that. I'll leave that in the description box below. But once the meat is brown, I'm adding in some onion and garlic, and then I'm toasting that orzo until it is aromatic. And now I'm adding in some water. I think it was 2 cups of water, a cup of cream, and I did not have any chicken broth because the Instant Pot was still going. So about a half a tablespoon of chicken bouillon, which is a great little ingredient to keep around when you are in a pinch. Now, when you're making these one pot meals with pasta like this, one trick is to make sure it doesn't get to a rolling boil. You really want it to bubble more than boil. And once the orzo is done, I'm turning off the heat and I'm adding in some Parmesan cheese and a few big handfuls of spinach. And then I'm stirring that in until the cheese has melted and the spinach is wilted with just the residual heat in the Dutch oven. If you overcook spinach, it gets really slimy and kind of gross. So using the residual heat is the best way I have found to cook spinach into a dish like this. This was delicious. Again, I think this would be really good spicy, but I have a little one in the house. But you can add any flavors or seasonings you want, and it is so good. Last up on the one dish dinner menu is a chicken and pasta bake. And here are some pretty familiar ingredients: sourdough breadcrumbs, Parmesan cheese. I'm adding in a little bit of freeze-dried onion powder and Italian seasoning, and then I'm drizzling that with olive oil until it gets kind of clumpy. Off camera, I made an entire pot of pasta. So I have that pasta drained and in my other Dutch oven, and now I'm adding some freeze-dried cherry tomatoes from our garden, a few big handfuls of kale, and now I am finally using some of that chicken broth because the Instant Pot is done. So I'm adding in, it's a little hard for me to tell because I eyeballed this, but I think at this point I probably put in about a half a cup of chicken broth. And then I put in some Parmesan cheese and a big old heaping spoonful of sour cream. I did add more chicken broth to this. What I'm looking for is for all those ingredients to be coated with the broth. I don't want to soak everything because that will overcook the pasta, but I do want enough broth in there to coat all of the ingredients. Now, kale is a much hardier green than spinach. So in the last recipe, I stirred the spinach in with the residual heat, but kale can handle the heat. So I'm not worried about that too much. So I get everything stirred together, including the kale. And now I'm adding that breadcrumb and Parmesan cheese topping and putting it in the oven at 350 degrees Fahrenheit until it is warmed through and the top is golden and beautiful. The freeze-dried cherry tomatoes were killer in this. They tasted like sun-dried tomatoes. So if you don't have freeze-dried tomatoes, I recommend using sun-dried in this. It is really good with that touch of sweetness. One of the best ways to stay in the Moon and Magnolia know is to join the email list. When you join, I will send you all of my recipes, tutorials, videos, and more directly to your inbox. I'll leave a link for that in the description box below. And if you want to save this video for reference, you can save it directly to your Pinterest boards. Just head over to the video, hit share, select Pinterest, choose your board, and it is there for you whenever you want to reference back to this video. I hope you are off to a wonderful Thanksgiving week and that these recipes offered you a few ideas for how to keep things simple ahead of the feast. Thanks so much for stopping by today, and I will see you again next time.